Let's get right into it. Number 10. In 1943, a naval engineer was trying to design a spring that could stabilize sensitive equipment on ships, something that could absorb ocean movement without breaking. Instead, he knocked one of his prototype springs off a shelf. What happened next had nothing to do with ships at all. The spring didn't fall. It walked, flipping end over end down a stack of books and onto the floor in a slow, mesmerizing tumble. Richard James realized almost immediately that stabilizing equipment was the least interesting thing this spring could do. 2 years of tweaking the coil tension later, he had a toy. When it launched at a department store in 1945, the first 400 units sold out in 90 minutes. Compare that to most product launches, which take months of marketing just to get noticed at all. The Slinky never solved the naval problem it was built for. It solved a completely different one nobody had asked about, which is a strange way for a toy that sold over 300 million units to begin its life. As a failed piece of military engineering that simply refused to stay useful. Number 9. In 1928, a scientist left for vacation without cleaning up his lab, which under normal circumstances would just be bad housekeeping. Alexander Fleming came back to find one of his petri dishes contaminated with mold, the kind of mess most researchers would toss straight into the trash. Instead, he noticed something odd around the mold itself. A clear ring where the bacteria he'd been growing had simply stopped growing, not slowed down, stopped entirely. Fleming isolated the substance the mold was producing and identified it as a bacteria-killing compound, the first true antibiotic in medical history. Penicillin has since been credited with saving an estimated 200 million lives worldwide. Compare that number to the entire population of a large country, kept alive by a substance that only exists in modern medicine because someone forgot to wash a dish. It's easy to imagine a slightly tidier version of Fleming who never leaves that mold to grow, and modern surgery still looks terrifyingly different because of it. Number 8. In 1945, an engineer working on radar technology at Raytheon reached into his pocket and found something that shouldn't have happened. His chocolate bar had completely melted. Percy Spencer wasn't standing near a stove or any heat source. He was standing near a magnetron, a component used to generate the microwaves inside radar systems. Most engineers would have written it off as a ruined snack. Spencer got curious instead, placing popcorn kernels near the magnetron and watching them pop on the spot. He followed it up with an egg, which reportedly exploded, cooked from the inside before anyone expected it to. Within a year, Raytheon had filed the first patent for a microwave oven. The earliest commercial units stood nearly 6 feet tall and cost around $5,000, a price that would buy a house in some parts of the country at the time. Today, over 90% of American households own one. It's strange to think a piece of kitchen technology used daily by hundreds of millions of people started as a ruined candy bar nobody meant to test. Number 7. In 1938, a chemist at DuPont was trying to invent something almost aggressively unglamorous, a safer refrigerant gas to replace the toxic chemicals used in refrigerators at the time. Roy Plunkett had pressurized a batch of tetrafluoroethylene gas and stored it in small canisters for testing. When he opened one of the containers expecting gas to escape, nothing came out. The canister felt full but empty at the same time, which understandably confused him enough to cut it open. Inside was a strange white powder, waxy and completely unlike anything in his refrigerant research. Testing revealed the substance was heat-resistant and almost nothing could stick to it, properties that had absolutely nothing to do with refrigeration. It was named Teflon, and decades later it became the backbone of non-stick cookware worldwide, along with aerospace parts and medical implants. Picture setting out to build a safer fridge, and accidentally inventing the reason eggs don't stick to a pan anymore. Plunkett spent his career chasing cold air, and ended up discovering one of the slipperiest materials on Earth instead. Number 6. In 1968, a chemist at 3 million was assigned a very specific task: create an extremely strong industrial adhesive, the kind that bonds permanently and doesn't budge. Spencer Silver did the opposite. His formula produced an adhesive so weak it could barely hold 2 sheets of paper together, and worse, it never fully dried, staying tacky indefinitely. By every measure of the original assignment, it was a failure. For years, Silver pitched it internally with no real success, since nobody could figure out what a permanently weak glue was actually good for. The answer came from a colleague named Art Fry, who used the adhesive to keep bookmarks from sliding out of his hymnal during choir practice. That small fix eventually became the post-it note, and even its now iconic yellow color happened by accident, since the lab next door only had scrap yellow paper available at the time. More than 50 billion post-it notes are sold worldwide every year now. It's a rare case where a failed assignment sat quietly for years before someone finally realized failure was actually the entire point. Number 5. In 1903, a French chemist named Edouard Benedictus was working in his lab when a glass flask slipped off a shelf and fell to the floor. Ordinary glass would have shattered into scattered pieces across the room. This flask cracked but held its shape almost entirely, the fragments staying loosely bonded together instead of flying apart. Benedictus investigated and discovered the flask had previously contained a plastic solution called cellulose nitrate, which had evaporated and left behind an invisible coating on the inside of the glass. That thin film was the reason the flask hadn't exploded into shards. He connected the discovery to a newspaper report he'd recently read about car accident injuries caused by shattered windshield glass, and the idea for safety glass was born almost instantly. Laminated safety glass is now standard in car windshields worldwide, protecting millions of drivers daily from a specific kind of injury Benedictus wasn't even trying to prevent. It's a strange thought that modern car safety owes something to a bottle nobody meant to drop, sitting on a shelf at exactly the wrong angle at exactly the right time. Number 4. At the 1904 World's Fair in St. Louis, an ice cream vendor ran into a problem that had nothing to do with the ice cream itself. He ran out of dishes to serve it in. With a line of customers waiting and no bowls left, panic set in fast at a booth built entirely around ice cream sales. A nearby vendor selling thin waffles noticed the chaos and offered an improvised fix, rolling one of his waffles into a cone shape on the spot. The ice cream went straight into it, no dish required. The idea spread through the fairgrounds almost immediately, since it solved the vendor's shortage and gave customers something portable to walk around with. What started as an emergency fix between two strangers' booths became one of the most iconic dessert formats in the world, invented not through careful planning, but through a shortage nobody saw coming that same afternoon. It's strange to imagine a summer festival accidentally inventing something now sold by the billions every year, born entirely from one vendor's very bad day. Number 3. During World War II, a chemist named Harry Coover was tasked with a very specific, very military goal: create a perfectly clear plastic material suitable for precision gun sights. Instead, his formula produced something almost unusable for that purpose. It stuck to absolutely everything it touched, bonding surfaces together within seconds, which made it a complete disaster for optical lens work. Coover initially discarded the compound as a failed material, unsuitable for the delicate precision the military needed. Years later, working on an unrelated project, colleagues rediscovered the same formula and finally recognized what they were holding. An adhesive that bonded almost instantly, stronger and faster than anything commercially available. It eventually became known as superglue, sold worldwide for both household use and, decades later, emergency battlefield wound closure. Compare that arc to a rejected prototype sitting in a drawer for years before someone realizes it was never actually broken. Coover spent the war trying to make something clear enough to see through, and accidentally created something strong enough to hold nearly anything together instead. Number 2. In the 1980s, pharmaceutical researchers were testing a new compound aimed at treating high blood pressure and chest pain caused by restricted blood flow to the heart. Clinical trial results came back underwhelming for the condition it was designed to treat, the kind of disappointing data that usually ends a drug's development entirely. But trial participants kept reporting one very specific, very unexpected side effect, one researchers hadn't been looking for and initially didn't know what to do with. Pfizer pivoted the entire trial around that side effect instead of the original heart condition, launching a new set of studies built specifically around it. By 1998, the drug hit shelves as Viagra, becoming one of the best-selling pharmaceutical products in modern history. It's a rare case where a clinical failure and a commercial breakthrough turned out to be exactly the same trial, just aimed at the wrong original target. Sometimes the drug company's build isn't the one that ends up on the shelf. Number 1. In 1895, a German physicist named Wilhelm Röntgen was experimenting with cathode ray tubes, testing how electrical currents behaved when passed through gas inside sealed glass. During one experiment, he noticed a fluorescent screen across the room begin to glow, even though a thick cardboard barrier stood directly between it and the tube. Cathode rays couldn't physically pass through solid cardboard, which meant something else entirely was responsible for the glow. Röntgen spent the following weeks investigating this mysterious new form of radiation, eventually producing the first image of its kind. A picture of his wife's hand, showing her bones and wedding ring in eerie, ghostly detail. He called the discovery X-rays. Within a single year, hospitals worldwide had adopted the technology for medical diagnosis, transforming how doctors could see inside the human body without ever making an incision. Every one of the accidents on this list started with someone noticing something slightly off and choosing curiosity over dismissal. Röntgen's unplanned glow across a dark room ended up rewriting what medicine could see, simply because he refused to assume the cardboard was doing its job. That's 10 accidents the world couldn't live without. If you like this, subscribe for more.